A black single father, a corporate boardroom, a CEO pointing her finger in accusation. What Darius Montgomery faced that cold November afternoon wasn't just a humiliating search of his work bag. It was a calculated act of sabotage designed to destroy his career and his reputation in one public moment. An act that would have succeeded if an elderly woman in the corner hadn't recognized something no one else could see. This is the story of how one grandmother's words changed 5 lives forever. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. Darius Montgomery had worked as a custodial supervisor at Westfield Technologies for 6 years, managing a team of 12 janitors who kept the sprawling tech campus in Austin, Texas spotless. At 41, he'd built a quiet life of dignity and purpose, raising his 14-year-old daughter Imani alone after his wife Crystal had died from complications during what should have been routine gallbladder surgery when Imani was 8. The medical malpractice settlement had been substantial enough to buy their modest house outright and put money away for Imani's college fund. But Darius had continued working because he believed in the value of honest labor, in showing his daughter that work mattered, that taking pride in what you did mattered regardless of what anyone else thought. His team respected him. The facilities manager praised his leadership, and for 6 years Darius had moved through the gleaming hallways of Westfield Technologies with quiet competence, invisible to most of the executives who rushed past, but essential to keeping their world running smoothly. That all changed on a Tuesday in November during the quarterly executive board meeting. Darius had been called in to address a persistent leak in the executive conference room, a top-floor space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Austin. He'd brought his work bag, a battered leather satchel that had belonged to his father, containing his tools, his tabletware. He tracked maintenance schedules, his lunch and Imani's school permission slip that he needed to sign and scan back to her. The meeting was in session when facilities had radioed him about the leak becoming worse, water now dripping onto the carpet near the wall of screens where presentations were displayed. Darius had apologized quietly for the interruption, slipped into the room and begun assessing the ceiling tiles to locate the source of the leak. He'd been there perhaps 10 minutes, working efficiently while the executives continued their meeting, when Nicole Westfield herself had suddenly stood up. Nicole Westfield was 38, the CEO who'd inherited the company from her father 5 years ago, and had run it with ruthless efficiency ever since. She was striking in the way powerful people often are, tall and poised with auburn hair pulled back in a severe bun and gray, eyes that could freeze you with a glance. She had a reputation for being brilliant and merciless, for crushing competitors and firing underperformers without hesitation. And right now, those gray eyes were fixed on Darius with an expression of shock and outrage. "Security," she said, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. "I need security in here immediately." The room fell silent. Darius, balanced on his stepladder with a ceiling tile in his hands, froze. "Ma'am?" he said carefully. "Is there a problem?" "That bag," Nicole said, pointing at his leather satchel on the floor, beside his ladder. "That's my father's bag. That's the bag that was stolen from his office 2 weeks before he died. How the hell did you get it?" The accusation hit Darius like a physical blow. Around the conference table, 12 executives were suddenly staring at him, their faces showing various degrees of shock, suspicion, and uncomfortable fascination. "I don't know what you're talking about," Darius said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline suddenly flooding his system. "This bag belonged to my father. He gave it to me 15 years ago." "You're lying," Nicole said flatly. "That bag, has my father's initials embossed on the inside flap. JW for James Westfield. I'd recognize it anywhere. Security." 2 security guards appeared in the doorway, summoned by someone's quick phone call. Nicole pointed at Darius. "Search his bag, right now. I want to see what else he's stolen from. This company." Darius felt heat rising in his face, a mixture of humiliation and anger. "You can't just search my personal belongings without cause," he said. But even as he said it, he knew he was wrong. This was a private company. Nicole Westfield could do whatever she wanted. "I have cause," Nicole said coldly. Theft of company property. That bag was valued at over $2,000 and had sentimental value beyond measure. Search it. The guards moved toward Darius's bag. Darius climbed down from his ladder, his hands shaking slightly, his mind racing. This was insane. The bag had been his father's, bought at a thrift store in Houston back in 2008. A splurge for a man who'd worked construction his whole life and never owned anything fancy. But it had the right initials, J.W., because his father's name had been James Washington. Pure coincidence. Except now it looked like he'd stolen it from the company's founder, and there was no way to prove otherwise. One of the security guards opened the satchel and began removing items. Work gloves, a measuring tape, the tablet, the lunchbox with Darius's name written on it in Imani's careful handwriting, the school permission slip, a small photo of Imani from her middle school graduation. Normal things, work things, nothing stolen. Until the guard pulled out something that made Darius's heart stop. A gold watch. Expensive, clearly antique, with intricate engravings on the case. Darius had never seen it before in his life. "What the hell is that?" he said, staring at the watch in genuine shock. The guard held it up. Nicole's face went white. "That's my father's watch," she whispered. "The one that disappeared from his desk 3 weeks ago. Oh my God." She looked at Darius with an expression of such contempt that it felt like being slapped. "Call the police. I want him arrested for theft. I want him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Darius felt the world tilting. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. "I have never seen that watch before," he said, his voice rising despite his efforts to stay calm. "Someone put it in my bag. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I swear to you I did not steal anything." "Of course you'd say that," Nicole said. "Everyone caught stealing says they're innocent. Security, escort him out of the building. He's fired effective immediately, and he's banned from company property pending criminal charges." The room was completely silent now, everyone watching this public humiliation unfold. Darius felt tears of rage and helplessness burning behind his eyes, but he refused to let them fall. He would not give these people the satisfaction of seeing him break. The security guards moved toward him, and Darius was gathering himself to leave with whatever dignity he could salvage when a voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Nicole Alexandra Westfield, you stop this right now." Everyone turned. In the corner of the room, in a chair, Darius hadn't even noticed anyone occupying, sat an elderly woman. She must have been in her late 70s with white hair and a face lined with years but sharp eyes that were currently fixed on Nicole with an expression of profound disappointment. "Mother," Nicole said, and there was warning in her. "This isn't your concern. Please let me handle this." "I will not," the elderly woman said, and she stood up with the aid of a cane, moving slowly toward the center of the room. "You want to know where that bag came from? I'll tell you. I gave it to this young man's father 20 years ago." The room somehow got even quieter. Darius stared at the woman in complete confusion. "What?" he managed. The woman, who Darius now realized must be Eleanor Westfield, the founder's widow, looked at him with kind eyes. "Your father was James Washington, wasn't he? Worked construction for Hartley and Sons?" Darius nodded slowly, too shocked to speak. "I thought I recognized you," Eleanor said. "You look just like him. James Washington was the foreman on the crew that built the original Westfield building back in 2003. My husband and I watched that building go up every day, and we got to know some of the workers, James especially. He was kind, professional, had a way of making everyone around him work better." Eleanor turned to Nicole, who was staring at her mother with an expression Darius couldn't quite read. "When the building was finished, your father wanted to give James a bonus. But James refused, said he was just doing his job. So your father gave him that bag instead. Said every man deserved one really good piece of leather to carry his tools in. James cried when he accepted it, said no one had ever given him anything so fine." Darius felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. His father had never told him that story, had just said the bag was a gift from a grateful client. But the initials, Nicole said, her voice uncertain now. J.W. James Westfield. James Washington, Eleanor said gently. Same initials. Coincidence, yes, but also part of why your father chose that particular bag to give him. He thought it was fitting. And the watch? Nicole pressed. But her voice had lost its edge. Eleanor looked at the watch still in the security guard's hand, and her expression grew sad. That watch was never your father's, dear. Your father's watch had a different engraving. This one, she took the watch from the guard and examined it closely. This one was purchased 3 months ago from an estate sale. I know because I bought it myself as a potential gift for your brother Michael. Darius's mind was reeling. Then how did it get in my bag? He asked. Eleanor looked troubled. That's an excellent question. She turned to Nicole. Who has access to company property that's been stored or inventoried? Who knew this watch existed? Nicole's face was going through a complex series of expressions, embarrassment and confusion, and something that might have been dawning realization. Michael, she said quietly. Michael was supposed to catalog Dad's personal effects that we'd been storing, and Michael was in the facilities office this morning. He said he needed to check on some cleaning supplies for an event. Darius felt pieces clicking into place. Michael Westfield, Nicole's younger brother, was the company's VP of operations. Darius had met him exactly once, when Michael had complained about the cleaning schedule conflicting with his department's late-night work sessions. Michael had been dismissive and condescending, making comments about the help that had made Darius's teeth clench. And 2 weeks ago, Darius had filed a formal complaint with HR because Michael had propositioned one of the janitors on Darius's team, a young woman named Rosa who'd been visibly upset by the attention. HR had told Darius they'd handle it discreetly. Maybe too discreetly. Maybe not at all. Michael set me up, Darius said slowly. He planted that watch in my bag to get me fired and arrested, because I reported him for harassing Rosa Gonzalez. The room erupted. Executives started talking all at once. Nicole held up a hand for silence, her face now flushed with what looked like anger but directed at a different target than before. Someone get Michael in here, she said, and someone get HR on the phone, now. She turned to Darius, and for the first time, her expression held something like respect, or maybe just acknowledgement. Mr. Montgomery, I owe you an apology. A profound one. I made assumptions based on appearance and circumstance, and I was wrong. I'm sorry. Darius didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. Eleanor reached out and touched his arm gently. I'm sorry too, young man. Sorry you've been put through this. And I'm sorry I didn't recognize you sooner. How is your father? I'd love to see him again. Darius felt his throat tighten. He passed away 4 years ago. Cancer. Eleanor's face crumpled with genuine sadness. Oh no, I'm so sorry. He was a good man. One of the best I've ever known. The next 2 hours were chaos. Michael Westfield was summoned to the conference room, walked in with confident swagger, and went pale when he saw the watch on the table and Darius still standing there instead of being led away in handcuffs. Under Nicole's furious questioning, and with HR present, the truth came out in pieces. Michael had indeed planted the watch in Darius's bag, accessing the custodial office that morning when he knew Darius would be at a training session. He'd hoped to get Darius fired and arrested, removing the problem of someone who dared to report him for sexual harassment. He'd known about the bag because he'd seen Darius carrying it and had overheard someone comment on the nice leather. The plan had been simple. Discredit Darius, make him look like a thief, ensure no one would ever believe his harassment complaint. What Michael hadn't counted on was his own mother being in the boardroom, recognizing both the bag's true origin and the watch he'd stolen from her purchases. Nicole fired Michael on the spot. Security escorted him from the building while he protested and threatened to sue, but his threats rang hollow when faced with security. Camera footage that HR pulled up showing Michael in the custodial office that morning, something he'd explicitly denied doing when questioned. Criminal charges would follow, Nicole said grimly, both for theft of the watch and for attempted fraud in framing Darius, and the harassment complaint against Michael, which had been under review for 2 weeks, would now be investigated properly with outside counsel. Darius should have felt vindicated, and part of him did, but mostly he felt exhausted and shaken, aware of how close he'd come to losing everything based on one person's malice and the assumptions people made about a black custodian in a corporate building. "I want to make this right," Nicole said to him after Michael had been removed, and most of the executives had been dismissed. Only Eleanor remained, sitting quietly in the corner. "I don't just mean apologizing, though I do." "Apologize again?" "I mean truly making this right. I just want to go home," Darius said honestly. "I want to hug my daughter and forget this day happened." "I understand," Nicole said, "but first please let me do something. You were humiliated publicly. You deserve public vindication. I'm going. Send a company-wide email explaining what happened, clearing your name completely and making it very clear that you are not only innocent, but that you're a valued employee who was wronged by my brother's actions. I'm also giving you a promotion." Darius blinked. "What?" "I'm creating a new position. Director of Facilities and Environmental Services. It comes with a significant raise, an office, and direct report to me. You'll oversee not just custodial, but all facilities management across our campuses. I've watched your personnel file, Mr. Montgomery. Your team has the lowest turnover and highest satisfaction scores in the company. You know how to lead. I want you in a position where that leadership is recognized and compensated appropriately." Darius didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to refuse, to maintain his pride and walk away from this company that had almost destroyed him. But the practical part of him, the part that had Imani's college fund to think about, and a daughter who deserved every opportunity, couldn't ignore what Nicole was offering. "I'll need to think about it," he said finally. "Fair enough," Nicole said. "Take the rest of the week off. Paid. Think it over. The offer stands." As Darius gathered his things, his bag that had nearly cost him everything, Eleanor approached him again. "I meant what I said earlier," she said softly. "Your father was special. And from what I can see, you are too. The way you handled yourself today, with grace under terrible pressure, that's rare. Don't let bitterness over my son's actions take that from you." "I'll try," Darius said, and found that he meant it. Over the next few days, as Darius tried to process what had happened, the story somehow leaked to the local media. A reporter got wind of it, probably from one of the executives in the room, and suddenly Darius was being called for interviews. He declined them all, not wanting the attention, but the story ran anyway. Tech executive's brother frames custodian, grandmother saves the day. The article painted Darius as a hero wronged, and Eleanor as a moral compass, while Michael became the villain of privilege and cruelty. Darius found the coverage uncomfortable, but Imani was proud, showing the article to her friends and teachers, telling anyone who'd listen that her dad was the bravest man she knew. On Friday, Darius called Nicole and accepted the position, not because he'd forgiven her for her initial assumptions, but because Eleanor was right. Bitterness would only hurt him. And because he'd earned this opportunity through 6 years of excellent work, and he wasn't going to let Michael's sabotage steal that from him. His first day as director was surreal. He had an office, a real office with a door and a window, on the 3rd floor of the main building. His team threw him a small celebration, genuinely happy to see him elevated rather than resentful of his promotion, and Nicole was true to her word, giving him real authority and respecting his decisions. But the most unexpected development came from Eleanor. She'd taken to stopping by Darius's office regularly, bringing coffee and pastries, wanting to talk about his father and share memories Darius had never heard. It turned out James Washington and James Westfield had become genuine friends during that construction project, bonding over their shared love of fishing and their pride in their children. Eleanor had photographs she'd never known existed, pictures of the two men together at the building's completion, smiling and shaking hands. "Your father talked about you constantly," Eleanor told Darius one afternoon. "How smart you were. How proud he was that you'd gone to college. He said you were going to do great things." Darius found himself looking forward to Eleanor's visits. She was sharp and funny, with stories about building the company with her husband and raising 2 children while navigating the tech world of the 1980s and 90s. She asked about Imani, wanted to see pictures, and offered grandmother advice that Darius found surprisingly helpful. And one day, about 6 weeks into his new position, Eleanor brought her granddaughter with her. "Darius, I'd like you to meet Nicole," Eleanor said, and Darius looked up from his desk to see the CEO standing in his office doorway looking uncomfortable. "We've met," Darius said carefully. "I know," Eleanor said with a smile. "But not properly, not as equals. Nicole has something she wants to ask you." Nicole stepped forward, and Darius could see this was difficult for her. "I've been thinking about the harassment complaint you filed," she said, "and how it was mishandled, and about how many other complaints might have been mishandled over the years because the people filing them didn't have power or voice. I want to create a new position, Director of Employee Relations and Ethical Conduct, someone outside the normal HR chain who reports directly to the board and has real authority to investigate complaints and enforce consequences." She paused. "I want you to help me find the right person for that role. Someone who understands what it's like to be vulnerable in a power structure. Someone who will fight for people who can't fight for themselves. Will you serve on the selection committee?" Darius studied her face, looking for signs of performative wokeness or corporate posturing, but all he saw was genuine intent. "Yes," he said, "I'll do that." Over the next 3 months, Darius helped select a phenomenal candidate for the new role, a labor rights attorney named Patricia Chen, who'd spent 15 years advocating for workers in corporate environments. He watched Patricia clean house in HR, firing 2 people who'd buried complaints and implementing new protocols that actually protected employees. He saw his own team flourish under better policies and real support. And he found himself in meetings with executives who actually listened to him, who valued his input on facility strategy and employee welfare. But the most unexpected change was in his relationship with Nicole. They started having lunch occasionally, initially to discuss facilities issues but gradually expanding to broader conversations about leadership and company culture and what it meant to build something worth leaving behind. Darius learned that Nicole had taken over the company at 33, thrust into leadership when her father died suddenly and feeling desperately unprepared. She'd compensated by being harsh, demanding, never showing weakness. But Michael's betrayal and the realization of how badly she'd almost wronged Darius had shaken her. "I looked at you and saw a threat," Nicole admitted one day over sandwiches in her office. "Not consciously but subconsciously. A black man in my executive conference room, and my brain went to theft instead of maintenance. That's racism, Darius. I was racist and I hate that about myself, and I'm trying to be better." Darius appreciated the honesty even though it was uncomfortable. "The fact that you can acknowledge that means you're already better than most," he said. "Doesn't excuse it," Nicole said. "No," Darius agreed. "But it's a start." They talked about Imani and about Nicole's daughter from a marriage that had ended in divorce 3 years ago. Talked about single parenting and the guilt of never quite feeling like enough. Talked about loss, Darius's wife and Nicole's father, and how grief changed you in ways you couldn't predict. And somewhere in those conversations, somewhere between discussing employee benefits and sharing stories about their kids, something shifted. Darius found himself looking forward to their lunches, found himself noticing the way Nicole's face softened when she talked about her daughter, found himself thinking about her at odd moments and having to remind himself that she was the CEO, and he worked for her, and getting involved would be complicated and potentially disastrous. But Eleanor, who missed nothing, smiled knowingly when them having coffee in the break room one morning. "You two are good for each other," she said to Darius later. "Nicole needs someone who'll call her on her bullshit, and you need someone who'll match your strength with their own." "We're just colleagues," Darius protested. "Sure you are," Eleanor said. Keep telling yourself that. It was Imani who forced the issue. 6 months after the incident in the boardroom, Nicole had mentioned wanting to take her daughter Sophia to a museum exhibit on African American innovators in tech. Darius had mentioned that Imani wanted to see it too, and, somehow without quite planning it, they'd ended up going together, the four of them on a Saturday afternoon. The girls hit it off immediately, bonding over their shared love of coding and robotics. And Darius and Nicole found themselves walking through the exhibits together, talking about everything and nothing, while their daughters raced ahead pointing out displays. "This is nice," Nicole said quietly, as they watched Imani and Sophia puzzle over an interactive programming exhibit. "Yeah," Darius agreed. "It is. Darius, can I ask you something?" Nicole's voice was careful. "Maybe inappropriate, given that I'm your boss, but I'm going to ask anyway." "Okay," Darius said, his heart suddenly beating faster. "Would you like to have dinner with me sometime? Not as CEO and director, not as colleagues, just as Nicole and Darius, two people who might enjoy spending time together." Darius looked at her, at this woman who'd nearly destroyed his life 7 months ago, but who'd also given him opportunities he'd never imagined, who'd been humble enough to admit fault and strong enough to change, who made him laugh and challenged him, and saw him as fully human. "Yes," he said. "I'd like that very much." Their first official date was at a quiet Italian restaurant in downtown Austin. They talked for 3 hours, long after their plates had been cleared, about books and music and their dreams for their daughters' futures. Nicole told him about the pressure of living up to her father's legacy. Darius told her about the fear of failing Imani the way he felt like he'd failed to protect Crystal. They were honest and vulnerable, and by the end of the night, Darius knew he was in trouble, the best kind of trouble. They dated carefully after that, keeping it private initially, not wanting the office gossip or the complications, but word got out anyway, as it always does, and there was some grumbling about favoritism and power dynamics. Darius offered to resign from his position to eliminate any perception of impropriety, but Nicole refused. "We're both adults," she said. "We both have daughters to support and careers we've built. We're not going to let other people's small-mindedness dictate our choices. If they have concerns about favoritism, they can bring them to the ethics board. We'll document everything, be completely transparent, and prove that we can separate personal and professional." And they did. Darius continued to excel in his role, implementing facilities improvements that saved the company millions and improved employee satisfaction across every campus. Nicole continued to lead with vision and growing empathy, transforming Westfield Technologies into a company known for ethical treatment of workers at every level. And their relationship deepened into something neither had expected to find again. Real love, complicated and imperfect, but rooted in mutual respect and genuine affection. Eleanor watched it all with satisfaction, telling anyone who'd listen that she'd known from the start they were perfect for each other. The girls became inseparable, Imani and Sophia acting like sisters, pushing their parents toward marriage with the subtlety of sledgehammers. And 15 months after that disastrous day in the boardroom, Darius asked Nicole to marry him. He did it simply in Eleanor's garden, with both girls and Eleanor present. No grand gesture, just honest words about choosing to build a future together. "Nicole Westfield," Darius said, kneeling in the grass while Imani filmed on her phone and Sophia bounced with excitement. "You've challenged me, supported me, and shown me that love can grow in the most unlikely places. You've been a mother figure to my daughter, and you've given your daughter a father she deserves. You've made me believe in second chances and new beginnings. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Nicole said, crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes, absolutely yes." They were married 6 months later in a ceremony that blended their families and honored both the pain they'd endured and the joy they'd found. Eleanor stood as Nicole's matron of honor, wearing purple and beaming with pride. Imani and Sophia served as junior bridesmaids, walking down the aisle together in matching dresses. And when the officiant asked who gave Nicole in marriage, Eleanor stood and said, "Her father would have, but since he's not here, I'll do it." And I can tell you he'd be proud. Not of the company she built, though that's impressive, but of the woman she's become. The one brave enough to admit mistakes and strong enough to change. When it was time for vows, Nicole spoke first, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. Darius, I judged you unfairly the day we met. I saw you as a threat, instead of a human being, and I nearly destroyed your life because of my own prejudices and fear. But you showed me grace I didn't deserve. You gave me the chance to be better, to learn, to grow. You've taught me what real strength looks like, the kind that doesn't need to dominate, the kind that lifts others up. You've loved my daughter like your own, and you've shown me what partnership really means. I promise to never stop learning from you, to challenge my own assumptions, to fight for justice not just in boardrooms, but in our daily lives. I promise to love you fiercely and to build a family with you that honors both where we've been and where we're going. Then it was Darius's turn. Nicole, when your mother defended me in that boardroom, she gave me back my dignity. But you gave me something else. The opportunity to forgive and move forward. You could have let pride keep you from apologizing. You could have let ego prevent you from changing. But you didn't. You chose growth over comfort, and that's one of the bravest things I've ever witnessed. You've challenged me to be better, to lead with vision, to never settle for less than what I know is right. You've given Imani a mother who'll push her to reach higher, and a sister who'll stand beside her. You've given me a partner who meets me as an equal and loves me for exactly who I am. I promise to be the man you see in me, to support your leadership while challenging you when needed, to love Sophia like she's mine, and to build with you a family that proves love is always stronger than hurt. When the officiant pronounced them married and Darius kissed his new wife, the small gathering erupted in applause. Imani and Sophia cheered the loudest, already planning their shared bedroom in the house they'd all move into. Together. Eleanor wept happy tears, telling everyone in earshot that she'd orchestrated the whole thing from the start, which wasn't technically true, but no one had the heart to argue. The reception was joyful and intimate, held in Eleanor's sprawling backyard under lights and clear sky. Darius danced with Imani, with Sophia, with Eleanor, and finally with his new wife, holding her close while music played and their combined families celebrated around them. Thank you, Nicole whispered against his chest, for stopping that day, for not letting me get away with being small and scared and wrong. Thank you for being brave enough to change, Darius said, for seeing past your own fear to who I really was, for giving us this. They stood swaying gently, wrapped in each other and in the impossible beauty of their story, while fireflies began to blink in the gathering darkness and their daughters plotted adventures, and Eleanor watched with satisfaction, knowing she'd played her part in bringing them together. 1 year after a false accusation had nearly destroyed a good man's life, that same man was married to the woman who'd accused him, both of them transformed by crisis into better versions of themselves, both committed to building something that honored the pain they'd caused and received, while moving forward with hope and purpose. That night, after the guests had left and the girls were asleep in Eleanor's guest room, Darius and Nicole sat on the porch and talked about the future. I want to do more, Nicole said. With the company. I want to create pathways for people like you, people who get overlooked because they don't have the right credentials or the right skin color or the right connections. I want Westfield Technologies to be known for giving people chances. We can do that, Darius said. Together. Together, Nicole agreed, and kissed him. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds and feeling the weight and wonder of the commitment they'd made. Do you ever think about that day? Nicole asked. In the boardroom? When I accused you? Every day, Darius admitted. Every single day, and I'm grateful. For almost being arrested? Nicole asked in surprise. For your mother's courage, Darius clarified. For the chance it gave us to start over, to build something real from something broken. I wouldn't have chosen that path, but I can't regret where it led. I can, Nicole said quietly, I'll always regret how I treated you that day. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it. You already have, Darius said, pulling her close. By being honest. By changing. By loving. Me and my daughter. That's more than enough. And it was. Because their story wasn't about perfection or easy redemption. It was about the hard work of acknowledging wrong, making amends, and choosing to build something better from the rubble of mistakes. It was about an elderly woman's courage to speak truth in a room full of power. It was about a man's grace under pressure and a woman's humility in the face of her own prejudice. It was about two girls gaining a blended family and learning that love can grow in unexpected places. Most of all, it was about the truth that people can change, that assumptions can be challenged, that the worst moments can become catalysts for the best outcomes if we're brave enough to face them honestly. Darius had faced false accusation with dignity. Nicole had faced her own racism with courage. Eleanor had faced power with moral clarity. And together, they'd built something beautiful from a moment of crisis. If this story reminded you that change is possible, that grace can transform even the most hostile encounters, that speaking truth to power matters, and that love can grow from the most unlikely beginnings, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe because every week we bring you stories that prove courage, honesty, and compassion can triumph over prejudice, fear, and injustice. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to say stop when everyone else stays silent. One person brave enough to admit I was wrong. One person strong enough to forgive and move forward. And sometimes those choices create not just vindication, but transformation. Not just justice, but love. Not just a happy ending, but a whole new beginning built on truth, humility, and the revolutionary idea that everyone deserves to be seen as fully human.